Hi, welcome to the Indie Wine Podcast. My name is Matt Wood, and this is episode 75. Today we're hearing from Shane Hunt, wine buyer at Piazza's Fine Foods. Upon starting at Piazza's, Shane did a complete overhaul of the wine section, putting the focus on smaller, local, and low-intervention wines. We discuss what it takes to sell these types of wines in a grocery environment, how it feels to hook someone up with a 0-0 wine from Sonoma instead of a generic blend from a large brand, and what smaller producers can do to help get their wines into the hands of a more casual wine consumer. A quick reminder that there's a Patreon at patreon.com/indiewinepodcast. Link is in the show notes also. Any amount to help me keep telling wine stories ad-free and available for everyone is appreciated. Telling a friend is a great way to help out too. Here we go.
Yeah, there's like a subliminal layer where like when I have Rombauer on the shelf, it's on like it's in its spot, middle of the top shelf, whatever. But then like I'll put other cool stuff next to it, so then like there's a chance at least my first line of attack is like people are seeing it.
Yeah.
You know, like at least they're seeing it and it's juxtaposed next to something that they're like safe and familiar with. So then on top of that, I do like shelf talkers for products that I care about, where I actually get to like write about things and tell a story. And like there's a certain demographic of people who like really, really connect to that, like written word, something about it. Like people want to take something in on their time.
Yeah.
Whereas like I might ask somebody like, do you want to help? Or like, are you looking for anything? And they'll immediately like say no. And then I like walk away and I turn around and I see them and they're reading my words.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, well, I'm going to tell you about it one way or another.
Right, yeah.
But what I find, especially like in the peninsula, is super interesting because it's a lot of people who have been in the Bay Area for a long time and residential type people who drink wine daily and like consume and like on multiple levels. Like some people, yeah, you're not going to change people who drink Kendall Jackson every day. Like maybe not. Maybe that's like a customer who I just have to sell Kendall Jackson to. But a lot of people either like travel or just kind of like go out and about in the world and like experience different things on all sorts of like levels, whether it's like drinking, Silver Oak at steakhouses or like meeting up with friends at wine bars and where they do drink cool stuff and like, or go to wineries or like tasting rooms and stuff like that. So like, it's interesting that there actually is like more awareness than I gave it credit for at first. Like I've had like multiple people come across like Flores wines and be like, this stuff is awesome. Or like even like older people one lady in particular who I ended up like buying the rest of the Flores that I had on their shelf.
Nice.
She was like, oh, my son-in-law loves this stuff. And I'm like, that's really cool. Like to make that connection. And like, it is like a multi-generational, it is like whatever, natural wine, local wine, all this stuff. Like, it's hard for me to like look at it from the outside perspective because I'm like around wine and especially like this demographic of wine so much that it's really interesting to see how other people perceive it who aren't like entrenched in the community. Like it's hard not to like become an echo chamber or kind of like we all think the same thing and feel the same about a lot of the same stuff. But like, I don't know, like people who like Chardonnay, even if they do like richer Chardonnay or stuff like that, like there's so much cool stuff that like, yeah, there's like 100 cases of this were made and like it's this one dude who lives close by and like whatever it is, like, and it's delicious and you'll like it. And like sometimes there's like the hesitation, like people like, I don't know, especially like me in that environment, I always like second guess myself a little bit to where like this is pretty much how I dress at work, and like other people like cashiers are wearing like the Piazza's apron and whatnot. But some people either are like kind of hesitant, like, who are you? Do you even work? Like people ask me like, do you work here? Sometimes I don't have the name tag on and whatnot. But then like other people can appreciate like a really casual approach. Like, like if you want me to tell you about that wine, I'm going to like keep it simple, like it's really good. And like, I'm not going to try to upsell you or whatever. Like I'll just tell you what's up. Like I drink that wine, like.
Yeah. And I feel like there's a lot of wines made that maybe they are in more of a classic style where he's somebody that is used to Kendall Jackson, maybe like a Mount Eden Chardonnay or something like that that might have some oak and, classic style. They might be able to make that transition.
Yeah, and like once you're able to like, if you're able to have that conversation too of just like one of my favorite things is just like Santa Cruz Mountains wines in general, like especially down in the peninsula,
Yeah.
because you're pretty much as local as you can get. Like Montebello is like a 20-minute drive from the Palo Alto store, like 30-minute drive if that, up the hill. So it's like there's plenty of awareness, like peripheral of like the classics, like your Ridge and like some of the higher end stuff generally. I mean, even Mount Eden I would put in that category of like, high end obviously, but just like people that like drink wine, like definitely know it and respect it. And then like once you draw that parallel, like of local people actually do care, like a lot of the time, like some people don't. Some people want to drink bulk wine and like the Kendall Jackson or the Rombauer family is like their friend, like not literally, but like in their heart of hearts, like they care about like the brand, the label, like they're just like emotionally fixated on it. But when you actually start talking about real stuff and real wine and real people making wine, a lot of people, I would say most people, like gravitate, at least will show interest in that. Like they might buy it once and never buy it again just because they liked my pitch and they probably perfectly enjoy the wine, but maybe they'll just fall back into old habits. But a lot of the time, like that emotional impact on the way that people connect with wine, because I feel like wine is like kind of it's an emotional thing. Like it's intimate, like however you enjoy it. Like it should be casual, it should be fun and all those things. But like wine is like a relationship based thing, as is like all the things that we consume and do. But like people have relationships with wine, and once you like introduce people to something, it's powerful. So like what better way than like bringing the community in on it. And like the way at the grocery store, like the style of Piazza's as a grocery store is like that typical like specialty grocery, but like with more emphasis on like the community aspect of it. Like that's how they've been like legacy grocery stores that have been in a community for a couple decades or a few decades, like, so just like matching that environment with like, hey, this wine is actually made by these dudes that I know, and their facility is like an hour away from here, like whatever. And by the way, they work with people who farm organically, and like, again, just like telling that story of like wine made by humans, like fit for human consumption with added, extra benefits of like, oh, it's organic and this minimal intervention. Like I stopped trying to pitch natural wine at these places a while ago because the label of natural wine a while ago, I kind of like ditched that, left that behind, because it either means nothing to people, like from a pedestrian or casual standpoint, or like if it does have meaning, it's not a good one. Like the amount of times I've heard kombucha in reference as a response to natural, like, oh, my buddy this one time poured us this stuff and it was just like apple cider vinegar, and I'm like, I don't doubt it actually.
So you feel like other terms connect with your consumer a little better?
Yeah, I think that like starting, like I've just been my big thing like now that I'm like super just passionate about is pushing the concept of local wine. Like I mean California wine in general, like we're in California, but local wine, like California wine is awesome. Northern California wine is awesome. Like I think that like not enough people are like focusing on that standpoint. Like even in the community, like from the consumer perspective, like people are down with like supporting the homies and like all that stuff, but like no, like California wine is sick. Like it's super cool and like historical, like both on like the historical standpoint and like the more avant-garde side of it, and people trying to like do experimental cool things, but also like people who just like pay homage to like classic California. Like that's like what I'm like super excited about, is like actually like promoting like old school California red wine that's like unapologetic and like higher alcohol with some extraction and like and like that's what I'm connecting with, like selling like Dan Marione's red blend to 75-year-old women who want Zinfandel, and I'm like, sure, I bet you want some high alcohol Zinfandel too. This is a Cab Zin Merlot blend. It's big as fuck and it's 15% alcohol and it gives you everything you want. And it's fucking delicious and it's stable and you could drink it like 5 days after it's opened. And by the way, it's 0.0. And like, I don't even need to say that. But like, it's really cool that this lady is taking this bottle home with her friends, and there's like, I bought 10 cases at my store of like probably like less than 100 that were produced, and like she's back for more, and now I'm sold out of it. And I'm like, dude, what cooler way to like connect with people by like bridging this gap to where like so many of the wines that I'm selling, like these people would never come across. So it is like I'm like an ambassador to this like demographic, or like there's like a rift between like, I feel like I'll refer to it as like our community, like the natural wine, local wine community, whatever that like convalescence is, and like the broader public, I feel like.
Okay, so you feel like it kind of bridges that, maybe because they're not going into a specialty shop. They're kind of at their normal sort of.
I think
Piazza
it's
is probably not a grocery store, but
yeah, I mean,
kind
it's,
of at their,
it's a grocery store. Like it's
know,
a proper,
I
it's
mean-
a proper grocery store, full service grocery store. So like, that's like an environment that you can reach so many more people. And like, yeah, it's super cool to like meet people who do go to specialty shops. Like I have like some overlap with like K&L, and like there's like a really nice wine shop that actually my former coworker came from, called Wymax, that's been in Burlingame for like since like 1968 or something. And you know, people who shop there they buy their wine there, but they also like buy groceries at Piazzas. And so like it's cool to meet people who are like, yeah, like well versed and see label overlap where they're like, oh, this is cool that you have this and whatnot. And people who go out and spend time in the city and like Oakland, it's really cool. You're like always stoked to meet those people. But like that's like less often than it would be great if that was every day, where I'm like, yo, what's up? Like, oh yeah, you know the Samuel Lewis Smith wine's great, and like buy it all. Like, but no, like it's rare. Not like it happens enough to like be excited about, but it's rare. So like when it's more people who are just like wine drinkers, there's much more like in common with people. It's like, all right, you like good wine? Me too. Let me like guide you in a direction that isn't me like forcing something on you that you don't like. And that's like, again, why I said I backed away from like the natural wine label, because earlier in my career, when I was like more of a beer buyer and like I was like always into wine and interested in it, but like also like well aware that I didn't know anything, which was beneficial, just like having that approach. And still to this day, I'll tell you that too. But like in that regard, like beer, I was like, I know beer really well. I know good beer, but like I also can recognize like what's cool or like what's gonna sell. And at that time, like starting out as a beer buyer at Gus's in the city, like we were pretty. This is like probably like I started in 2017, so like that pre-pandemic, late 2010s era. Like we were on like the cutting edge of like the emergence of like the new school natural wine of like all across like globally, but like California has like some of these producers that are like more well established now, or have come and went in some cases. We're kind of like first like breaking onto the scene in a larger scope, and like for us to have stuff on the shelf that was like on Instagram and like had that like cool kid stuff going on, like we had it all. Like I was making like Las Aras canned like stacks, like 5-10 case stacks of Las Aras cans. Like, oh, this is cool because of what my coworker told me about the whatever the comedian and the blah blah blah, and it's 0-0 or it's natty blah blah blah. I'm like, I pick up knowledge and stuff quickly, or like information quickly, so like I could hit the basics of wine and natural wine, but not like not from any academic standpoint, and like still developing my palate to recognize what good wine is, or what I think good wine is, and also like what flawed wine is. So like there was definitely a period of time where I thought like natty is the cool shit, and that's what we should be pushing, because like 0-0 and blah blah blah. But as I've matured a little bit and grown into a bigger role in a new company and stuff, and like had challenges with new demographics, or a broader demographic, really, is like, you don't want to put a bottle of, I don't want to name names, but you don't want to put like a 0-0 bottle that's not stable in somebody's hands who like just wants to drink like decent spend $30 on good solid table wine, whether for whatever their purposes, like for their meal. It's like, you don't want somebody to go home and open a bottle and be like, what? Like, it's cool.
Yeah.
Like if I think that there's space for like that. Like, I mean, I think you need to be able to call it like experimental wine. Like it's not, it has to be like differentiated, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
maybe it requires a little more of like that hand selling. I think probably where you are, like people just walk up, grab the bottle,
yeah.
take it away, and maybe there's no interaction at all with somebody that is knowledgeable about wine necessarily.
Yeah. And like, too, like, yeah, being at a place like Gus's in the city where like the demographic, like some people do want to drink, like they want a wine that's like riddled with VA because they think that that's like, they're like puckering and like, this is a bracing experience and this is what I want. I'm like, all right, cool. Like I'm not saying you shouldn't sell that or like, if that's what you want, then hell yeah, like good for you. But like, I definitely can't build a wine set around that. I like, realistically speaking, like I don't want any like flawed wine on my shelf anymore, you know, like, and to me, like heavy, like that threshold of acceptable VA is definitely like tighter.
Yeah, I was gonna say what I guess what do you consider a flawed
Yeah,
wine?
I mean, I don't want to hate on anybody, but like, I mean, like VA to an extent, like levels of VA perfectly fine. Like if some like the school of thought that like, oh, some levels of VA like contribute to the complexity of a wine or whatever. That's all fine. Like I think you know it when you taste it, like the past the threshold of like, whoa. But to me, like, you know, like Mouse is the one where I'm like, I just can't do it. Like, I'm like, I can't sell this bottle and feel good about it. If a wine's like mousy right off the bat, like if it goes mousy after a day, then I'm like, all right, like 0-0 or whatever. Like there's like an acceptable, like, all right, if as long as I'm honest and say like maybe able to communicate to people like, all right, this is a 0-0 wine and like you're gonna want to drink it and consume it. I'm still like on the fence of how I like really feel about the integrity of like me as like a salesman, like putting this wine in people's hands and like as long as like the understanding is there, then like cool. Like I'm all for like selling wine and introducing people to different approaches to wine and like what wine is or can be. But like Mouse is a flaw, like like flat out, you know, like it just ruins the wine to me. And like I guess some people like don't taste Mouse or have higher tolerance for it, but I think I'm more sensitive to it. So as soon as I'm like, it just ruins the finish. And like, don't you drink wine? Like that's the big part of like all the sommelier shit where people are like, oh, the finish and like that's like the most important part, and Mouse just destroys it. So I'm like, what's the point? So like I won't sell any wine that's mousy. I'm just like, no, I can't do it. Like it's just for a grocery store, you know, if like if I was in a or whatever the wine bar in San Jose is,
Good Time.
Good Time. I just call it Good Boy wine. That's what comes to mind for some reason. But like Good Time, it's like, yeah, like they have tons of like really cool, great, stable wine, but then there's like plenty of like, yeah, like wine that's like way crazier and like that you wouldn't want people to accidentally take home in a grocery store and be pissed off that they spent $40 on something that they feel like they can't drink, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you touched on it a little bit earlier, but kind of what's your sort of target demographic at Piazza's or sort of your general average customer, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's like an ongoing conversation with the owners and stuff. Or like, I mean, we have like a little marketing team that we like try to come up with innovative ways to get new customers in the door and just get people in the store. I mean, it's 2025, like grocery stores are challenged, you know, like between all the competition of brick and mortar, you know, your Costco's, your warehouses, your Safeways, all of these long-standing perceptions of like price and call it whatever, you know, all the challenges of a grocery store in general, and then add the online side of things and the marketplace is obviously flooded, right? So like, and people have plenty of options. So getting people in the store is just like always the goal, no matter what. So, but our existing demographic, to both our favor and sort of like not downfall, but like something that's a challenge that is like a lot of our customers have been shopping there for a long time.
Okay.
You know, it's like residential, like people have lived there for decades. The store's been there for decades. So like people come in, they love the store. They support the store. That's awesome. And like when I started, the wine set had fallen into disrepair because of a number of factors, but like my predecessor had I think when I started there was like a 5+ month gap. So even if
Got
they
it.
had done a great job prior to me, then there would still be, somewhat of a mess to pick up. But they had a different approach than I did. So like it was like the worst wine set I've ever seen. There's stuff in there that like I didn't know Classic Wines of California, the distributor, had so many SKUs, but we had all of them. Like, not just like every basic producer like Crane Lake and all this stuff, like every producer and then every SKU from them. So like, Crane Lake makes a rosé and they make a Grenache, and I'm like kind of making that up, but like just apply that to anything. Like there was like 75 rosés of many vintages. Like,
Okay. Yeah.
Kendall Jackson, who it's like, okay, I'll sell Kendall Jackson Chardonnay and La Crema Chardonnay, but like, do we need the rosé and the red blend? You know? But anyways, that like the demographic is like a lot of older people. We have Senior Tuesdays where seniors get 5% off. They love it. So there's like a lot of that. But my initial impressions once, a few months in, I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of old people here. That was my initial like, I don't know how successful I'll be. And I definitely like the first year was kind of like trudging through like this isn't gonna work, or like I'm gonna have to like compromise my principles a lot. And like, so maybe I didn't like go as hard as I thought as I could have with a lot of things. And like that was still like as I was kind of growing into
Kind of feeling your way a little.
And trying to like mature as a wine consumer / buyer, like establish like a better baseline for what my own personal preference and understanding of wine was, but also like how to sell it. So like that definitely like put some stuff on the shelf that I wouldn't have now, that I wouldn't now. But after that first year or whatever, like started to learn that like some of these people are like really cool. Like even like some of the older people who shop here, they're like really cool and like down to earth, and they're also like hip. So these people, like they use their phones, like some of these people go on Instagram or at least like listen to podcasts or like are just like in the scene or have family members who like they share good wine with and like get into, and or like travel. That's another thing where like, oh wow, I can sell some Sicilian wine because like these people spend some time in Sicily. And, like, they're way better traveled than me and have drank a lot more good wine than, like high-end wine, like that's stuff that I've never drank before. They're like well versed. So like that was like a slow realization, but once I realized, I'm like, you know what, like these people can get down. So let's go for it, like still have to be like tempered in an approach and like have a strategy behind it. But like the old folks will get down with the cool shit. And then on top of that too, like luckily, like both areas, I mean, Palo Alto is like Silicon Valley, so there's definitely younger people. Again, like unfortunately, the younger demographic is less likely to like have a grocery store that they frequent, every single week or multiple times a week. So like, there's a lot of people who like pop in and out. You see them and they don't, but that definitely happens, and that's where some of the stuff where I'm like having good conversations or just like people who are into spirits and making cocktails, like selling like, the Brucato Amaros, for example, the California Amaros, like they have one that's like a chartreuse replacement. And that's been like, I started carrying it. I was introduced to it by my Skurnik rep, like early on when I started at Piazza's, and I was just like, yeah, this is sick. I'm just going to have it on the shelf. But then like they were coming into their own at that time and getting a lot of press. So then like next thing you know, I was getting like phone calls like, do you have this stuff? And I'm like, dude, yeah, like I do, like come to Piazza's. And then like, some people who'd never come here, there's like a few other products like that where, you get a call and you're like, do you have this? Because like a company put it on their website or on their Instagram or whatever. And like get people in the door who are like searching out this stuff, and slowly but surely you come across like, you tap into that, like the cool kid demographic that like, yeah, if I was like in San Francisco and had this size of a set or this size of this set at this size, like it would be a huge deal, like, and I think it still is like a big deal. And I tell the owners, I'm like, you guys have the coolest grocery wine set in the peninsula, like without a doubt, like cool by my standards. Yes. But like by so many people's standards. Because like, yes, I have so much cool, natural, leaning, local, small production wine, like California wise. But then like even just the import set is just like cool. Like, and I'm tooting my own horn, but like it's compelling, it's interesting, it's good wine. And most of it's like affordable too. You know, like I have some expensive stuff, but like for the most part, it's all like $40 and under with a great range of like in that 20 to 35 range and even some under 20 stuff. And it's just like, it's for people. Like that's my whole approach. I'm like, I just want to sell wine to people, you know, like I don't want to be pretentious. I don't want to be dogmatic, only to an extent, you know, of like wanting a standard of quality and like a level, but also just being like, let's drink wine, you know, like what are we here for? You know, there's beer, there's good beer, there's good wine, we're a grocery store. Like,
yeah, there must be like some good, I guess, trust kind of on both sides, like from the ownership to sort of let you expand and kind of move into some not as obvious choices, but then like the customers also, that what you guys are putting out there, whether it's wine or liquor or lunch meat or whatever it is, that like it's of a certain quality or can be kind of, you guys stand behind it or are like vouching for it.
Yeah, I think that's like part of, I got to give like the Piazzas and their like leadership team a lot of credit for like decades of service to a community and like building a reputation. Like both stores have they're built on like, no matter what you say over the years, like everybody knows Piazza's for their produce. Like Piazza's produce is like reliable, dependable, always great, always fresh. And that's just like a prevailing narrative. And like, obviously that takes like work and dedication to achieve that. And like on top of that, like the deli has like a nice like cult following and always like recognition. And so like that reputation of like being a trustworthy source of fresh quality, local stuff, like all that vibe is like, I give the Piazza a lot of credit for that. And then for being able to like grow into like the modern era, more modern, grow with time. Yeah. To where like, I'm super lucky to be here in this job, like have this job in this position. Like, I think it took them, I think I have like two predecessors to my position, the wine buyer for the two Piazza stores. Like they created that position hoping to like achieve, I guess, what I'm doing, like more or less. But yeah, no, I'm super lucky to be trusted by them. And that when they reached out to me and we talked and stuff, they were like, we want you to do this. Like we trust you to do what you're saying you're going to do. And I'm like, okay, like I believe you. I take you at your word. And they're like, just go for it. Yeah. And obviously it takes there's a lot of moving parts to actually like implementing what I did, what I'm doing. But like, there's been very few bumps in the road other than just like everyday challenges and sales and trying to, you know, all the back end stuff is always a challenge and whatnot. Making things work and actually be successful on many fronts is a challenge for sure. And like, that's always a conversation, but like the trust and the encouragement to be like, this is what we want you to do. Like, oh, one of them came into my former job at Woodlands Market, which I took over the wine set there after Gus's, my first official wine manager title, even though I was like doing everything at Gus's prior. Wine manager at Woodlands, and I did that for like a year. And then a mutual connection, one of my reps, my Sienna Imports reps, has like long, like decades history with the Piazza family and like some of their higher up folks. And he's like, they were looking for my position, and they're like, oh, you should talk to Shane. And funnily enough, one of my bosses now sent me a text message like the weekend that my daughter was being born. My wife had like gone into labor on a Saturday morning or Friday night, started to go into labor. And like that Friday or Saturday, one of my bosses sent me a text like, hey, John gave me your number. I'm so-and-so. If you want to talk about this position, like give me a call sometime, anytime, just give me a call. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like I'm compelled, but also at that time I was riding my bike to work every day. I lived, 10, 15-minute bike ride from work. I was super into what I was doing at Woodlands. So I was like, I'll have a conversation just to like up my like experience of talking to people and whatnot in the industry.
See
But I'm
what's
like,
going on.
I'm not going to commute to the peninsula. Like I'm not, and it is. And then on top of that, my daughter's being born, my wife's in labor. So I took that text message and I like literally put it in my pocket. And 3 days later, 2 days later, my daughter's born. Fast forward 4 weeks, I'm on paternity leave, and I'm like, we drive over to like a 4 week appointment for my daughter or whatever. And I'm sitting in the car and I tell my wife, I'm like, are you okay to go in by yourself? I think I'm going to make a phone call.
Yeah.
And then I call them and lo and behold, they're like, why don't you just come talk to us? And then I went down to Piazza's like the next day or like that week. And then the rest is history. I don't. I think that's not what you asked, but I'm just getting now.
No.
Now you have the background.
No, that's all good. Yeah. How have you seen wine sales kind of evolve and change lately as far as what people are asking for? I mean, I know there's a lot of there's been a lot of talk, obviously, about like declining sales, but then also like non-alcoholic, and things like that. How have things like that been changing for you?
Yeah, I mean, the doom and gloom narrative is definitely like big.
Yeah.
And I think everybody sees their own version of it. And there's definitely less people drinking. There's definitely less people drinking wine. There's definitely so much competition, like I mentioned earlier, that like, yeah, like a place like Piazza's is like at risk of like losing sales because of pricing and, you know, all those other factors. So like since I started, like, you know, kind of that like transition out of the pandemic scenario where everything was like skewed in one direction and skewing back a different direction now, as I like the last 2.5 years have been in this position. Definitely like a decline, but for us, like, luckily I like tempered what drop in sales / drop in customer count, like all these things, like tempered it with like completely revamping the set. So like got like a new, like even like redoing the whole beer set and like really making that like a destination, because beer for me is like comes naturally. So I could make a great, like as good as you can get type beer set to where like a more casual demographic will latch onto quicker. Like all the dads love the beer set, and they're like, there's more like people who frequently are shopping the store, you know, with their kids to grab lunch for the day or grab like stuff for dinner that night, and like, oh, let me grab a 4-pack, let me grab a couple single 16-ounce cans. So like, luckily, like a boost in sales for the store in that regard to like temper it. But like the last 2.5 years, like definitely like it's been hard to increase year-over-year sales. Yeah. So like definitely like less drinking, more competition, all that stuff. Like luckily it's been like pretty even with like ups and downs for sure. But like, you know, some encouraging signs, like you hear like the bigger companies and like all the big distributors are talking about like 10, 20, 25, 30% drops, like huge declines, and just like, we're in trouble. And like, well, I definitely like feel some pressure, and like, there's like, you know, some discouraging things going on. Like overall, I'm like, there's enough people who drink wine and enough people who are wanting to drink good wine and all this stuff and beer and other things that we'll be okay, and we'll keep on keeping on. But to that end too, like the non-alcoholic thing is real. Like that is, when I was leaving Gus's, I had finally come around to like making a serious NA beer set. And like that was like not right when, but like Athletic Brewing and like Best Day, like this hat that I have, like we're like just Best Day had just come on the scene like around that time. And like I started to see like the potential of like, okay, wow, I sold 2 cases of this NA Kolsch in a week, and I'm reordering 4 cases this time. And I'm like, this is not a fluke, you know, it's not a fluke. And so once I left Gus's and did Woodlands, I just doubled down on NA stuff. And then when I started at Piazza's, I'm like, there's huge potential here to just like, let's just go for it. So like I have a whole NA dry shelf of NA cocktails, NA wine, more like trying to like expand it even to like, and there's a couple like breweries and stuff trying to do like elixirs and tonics and stuff. And like, I haven't dabbled that far, but like the potential to like continue expanding that type of set is there. And like the beer fridge has its own 4-foot door, a whole door of NA that I just like, anytime I see something with potential, just keep going for it. And like, luckily there's people who are making good products. Like best day, the beer is good. Like I have a 6-pack of the Kolsch in my fridge, you know, like it's good. It's very drinkable and it's very like satisfies the niche for sure. And then like you have like the St. Agrestis, like Phony Negroni stuff and like Gia. And I could say like some stuff about them being like selling out and they're more corporate now, but like it's good and it is of a certain quality. And guess what? It fucking sells too.
Yeah.
You know, and like if I can bolster my sales and also have like return customers who are happy with what I'm doing because of like having a huge non-alcoholic section, then that's like, I mean, what more can you ask for? Like it's, I got to take what I can get, but it's also good to feel good about what it is that I'm selling, you know, like, because there's a lot of non-alcoholic like garbage out there too. Like some of the NA wines are like, I think like de-alkalized with industrial grade solvents and stuff, which we won't sell at Piazza. So like, it's nice to be able to like, anytime somebody's like paying attention to the non-alcoholic set and just like feeling like appreciated, you know, like there's people who just kind of like, this is really nice. And maybe they only buy one thing or maybe they don't buy anything. Sometimes they're just like, oh, this is really good to know. My so-and-so, my best friend, I'll, you know, like passing it along,
like Thanksgiving or something like that.
Exactly. Like, just like that, like comfort of knowing like, okay, Piazza's they got my back.
Yeah. I've noticed you do like some producer showcases, or like I've seen a lot. You have producers in the store pouring. I think that was maybe one of the first times I sort of came across the name where I was like, oh,
what is
like
this?
there were maybe like 4 or 5 producers I felt like that folks that I've talked to or maybe I'm going to talk to soon that were in there pouring, and it surprised me, I guess, like that many. I thought it was really cool. It surprised me in a good way, you know.
Hell yeah. No, that's so like in general, like just from a general like strategy perspective, like we always try to do any like product from whether it's like the coolest stuff we have or like more kind of everyday beer, cider, spirits, like we always try to do demos. Like that's like a huge grocery thing no matter what. Like people in the store handing customers product for them to consume there on the moment. Like there's a huge advantage to that. Like obviously the potential for increase in sales in that moment are massive. So like, you know, we demo a lot of like the goal is always to have like a Friday demo. And like we have a lot of people who are just like, you know, like kind of every day, like having like the Sierra Nevada rep out, just pouring beer on a Friday. It's at least a good vibe.
Yeah.
You know, boosting sales, whatever. Like, and there's some more like local stuff that we do. Like there's like a limoncello, like a local limoncello producer. Her name's Samaria. She makes VG. And like she called me a year ago and was like, I'm Samaria. I make limoncello. I live down the street. And I'm like, okay, like limoncello. I sell like 6 bottles a year, if that, like a case of the one that I have. And she's like, well, that's fine. Like, I just want to meet you and like show you this product. And I'm like, okay, cool. You invested in it. The label's nice. The product's good. We'll bring it in. Like, sure.
Yeah.
And she does demos herself. And like, she sells like 20 bottles of $40 limoncello in 2 hours.
Yeah.
And like, there's many aspects of that,
Pretty
but
good.
it's just good too.
Yeah.
Like, and she's great and like all that, but I'm like, that's huge. So like demos are great. And that's just like a general grocery thing. But yeah, what you saw, the Piazza's local wine fair or what, it doesn't have an official title, but like that was like the first step towards like a magnum opus of like taking this like community, this like, again, calling it the local natural wine community. Like, I don't know what to label it, but like this community, like the community that you tap into,
small producers and
local small producers, like trying to do stuff that like bridge that gap or like fill that rift where like the grocery store and that section of the wine world belong together, or like putting them side by side or directly, you know, in that environment to be like, it's here, you know, force the point that like, again, people drinking this wine that they might never ever come across otherwise. And then kind of same with, you know, bringing the producers in is like, you're meeting an untapped market, you know, like you'll probably meet people who will directly either know your stuff or know, you know, related producers that
Sure.
like, 6 degrees of separation type stuff, but like an untapped market to where like you can sell to these people. You just need the right place to do it. It's like, because like all the wine festivals that happen, like the local stuff, they're all like super cool and fun, and like everybody has a blast. Like I went to Big West Wine Fest, and like it's a great time. Like clearly it's a great time. Like everybody's having fun. But I had multiple interactions with producers who were like, yeah, like it's cool to be here. We're unsure what the actual sales benefit of it is in the long run. Like,
Okay.
not like hating on it, not doubting it, but just like kind of being like, yeah, like how many of these connections are actually going to be like viable other than just like a good time, a good connection, like friends, whatever. Like, and that's important too. But like, when I went, I met like Monica and Benno, like, and I brought my like my 2-year-old daughter at that time to the woods out there with my wife.
Yeah.
And like, so it was less business than I wanted it to be, but it was it was really fun. But like realistically, I think both days I only tasted probably like with 7 producers.
Okay.
And one of them was Monica and Benno. And like, they were like the first booth that I had gone to with my wife. And pretty much we just spent the rest of the time chasing my daughter around. So like, there wasn't much actual FaceTime, but because it was the first one, I was like fresh, ready to go, had my attention. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is goddamn delicious Pinot Noir. I can sell this. Like, this is just like classic California Pinot. It's got some dark fruit. It's complex, but it's easygoing. From what you're telling me, it's a good price point for us. Like $34.99 on the shelf is like ideal because people will spend that 40 and under. Like Rombauer, we sell so much at $39.99. We sell cases on cases of it, but that just shows that people are willing to spend X amount of money on a wine that they can trust and rely on. And like the catch and release Pinot is definitely that, and I was just like, boom, like this is sick. Like, here's your, like, let me get your info. Oh, your alluvial sells you. Cool. I like alluvial. Let me follow up. And then like I left, and within a month or two of them, I'm carrying, 3-4 SKUs. And, to this date, we've sold like 20, maybe like 20 cases of that stuff across the board, of like mostly the Pinot, but like the Rosé crushes. We sell some of their orange stuff. We've sold a few cases of their North Coast Syrah, which that shit's crazy, hella good, like serious, lean, gamey Syrah. But like getting momentum with that. But anyways, like that connection, seeing that environment of like great vibes, good wine, good people, and then like not trying to replicate it, but like capture some of that essence and like, yeah, put it in a grocery store. Like maybe it's a little bit crazy. Maybe it definitely, like that was a great day, but like it was like I think we had eight producers. Like it was Monica Benno from Catch and Release, Tara from Tara Wine, Keegan from Assiduous, and Keegan showed up at like, we started at like 11. Keegan showed up at like 2, and I think he sold more wine than anybody. Like this dude was literally running back and forth to the shelf to grab more bottles. But like that's like a testament to, like, I love Keegan's wines, and I sell a shit ton of them now. Like I cannot keep the Malbec on the shelf. Like I bought the rest of the vintage, and I'm mad because I didn't buy an extra 5 cases because somebody buys it every single day. But like his wines are like great, and the sourcing is great. I think he has like his connection, so like he has some good advantage to take, some good things to take advantage of there. But like he makes the most of it, and he makes really good, high quality wine that's very approachable, and it's the right price. So like it crushes, like, and he crushed it. So that's awesome. But yeah, he did great. Keegan, David Rothschild from Las Vivas.
Yeah.
Ryan Sturm, which was like a huge honor.
Yeah,
and like,
he's a great dude.
He's like, what do you want me to pour? And I'm like, well, I have like 11 of your wines on the shelf. Why don't we just crack them all? And he's like, sure. Like, fuck it, let's go. And I'm like, dude, this is so awesome. Yeah. And I want to do it again. And it was a hugely successful day, but like, it's also like a lot. And like, I had other intentions. Like, I wanted to like promote it and have a flyer and all this stuff. And I ended up rescheduling it like a month, like it was supposed to be in October. And then they're like, reaching out to winemakers. They're like, why would it's harvest? And I'm like, no shit. Like, what am I trying to do here? So it was like a mid-November pre-Thanksgiving thing, which worked out great. But yeah, I want to do it again and just like refine it. Like I originally wanted like Lo-Fi Oyster Company to show up and just like, I guess like kind of copy the formula that like every of the, like all the, 3 or 4 local wine festivals in NorCal kind of follow the same thing. So I'm like, what if we just did it in a grocery store?
But it's cool to have something in that area. I mean, maybe I overlooked them, but I don't know if there's something exactly matching those types of producers on the peninsula there. I mean, there's obviously a lot like around here, like Oakland, Richmond, San Francisco. I guess maybe more in Santa Cruz proper, but
Santa Cruz definitely like there's like a little bit of that, like it like leaks over, like because people in the peninsula, like they're well traveled, they're used to like driving places. So like people who live in maybe San Mateo or that part of the peninsula like do go around. So like also like credits to like your Domain Edens and your like Thomas Fogarty's who have been around forever and like uphold a certain standard. Like kind of this, it's like an older generation, but like this like what we're talking about is a continuation of what those type of people began,
for sure.
So like that awareness helps. Like the people are generally aware of like the wine, the acumen of the area, how like good wine comes from here kind of thing, at least like to Ridge's credit, like whatever. But getting people also to like step outside of that box of like Ridge makes really good wine and that's it. Like let's not stop there. But yeah, that's like, I don't think there's much exposure in that area to like these wines. Like again, like some people, travel more, put in an extra effort to like eat out, go to the like these cool bars in the city, like Anchovy Bar. I have a couple people who are like, oh, I saw that Chaparral Brucato at Anchovy Bar or the new the Golden Sardine or what. It's like people are like, oh, like you went there? I'm like, that's sick. Like we're in Palo Alto right now and you were there on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's like honestly like an honor and a privilege to present these wines to people. And like part of me, like especially me as like a slightly less mature buyer, I was like what I was talking about earlier of like buying wine that maybe I shouldn't have. It's like, and that you could take that multiple ways of like, sometimes maybe it's too natty and sometimes maybe it's just like not sellable for whatever reason, price point, label, this and that. But like, yeah, it's like really an honor to like support these people who like, I end up meeting them at the wine fest or like invite them into Piazzas and have a great conversation. I'm like, these are actually like people I want to like spend time with and talk to and like all these things, but then like to actually be able to support them and like be a part of their business and like be, I want like to, they look at Piazzas and like look at their distributor and their reorders. They're like, wow, this is like helpful. Or like to be the guy who cleared out the end of Keegan's Malbec vintage and like now it's going to be waiting in the wings. It's like if I can alleviate a few headaches for some folks and actually like move some product, like that's cool. And like that's like nerdy grocery business talk. But like, I mean, like the other person I met on day one of the first person I talked to, I think Monica and Benno were like day 2, and the first person I talked to on day 1 at Big West was Dan Marioni. And I don't know if you know his wines.
Yeah, I do.
But like
Sonoma Mountain,
Legacy, that one of those that.
No, I've tasted those wines. Yeah, a decent amount.
Yeah, and he makes like some pretty crazy stuff, like some pretty natty, like funky, weird co-ferments and like stuff that I wouldn't sell. But he also has like his legacy, like his Couturi, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the his background with like working with the Couturi family and those wines and like that pedigree.
Yeah, they're kind of made in that little larger style, like a little more fuller body. They're not super like lean.
Yeah, exactly.
Like natural wine. They're a little more
robust.
Yeah.
But like, he was like one of the first people I talked to, and I think I had seen the wines maybe or like been peripherally aware of them.
Yeah.
But like I met him. I talked to him. My daughter's there. He had like his daughter was like 2. He mentions like, oh wow, like I have a daughter too. I'm like, so already like, okay, homies, cool. But then he like pours me. He has some crazy like red white co-ferment that's like a rosé thing, and it's like funky and weird, but like cool and compelling. And I'm like, all right, this is interesting, whatever. And then he pours me his red blend, the one I mentioned earlier. And I'm like, same thing. It just like hit. And mind you, it's like 100 degrees and like not ideal at all. But like overlooking that, I'm like, dude, this is sick. Like, let's go. Recognizing it right there that like we can do something with this. Like I can sell this wine. And he was on the brink of opening doses. So he's like, I don't have that much wine to sell. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll take what I can get. And like he introduced me to his colleague and stuff. And, you know, again, within a month or so, get some paperwork filled out, and next thing you know, I'm ordering 10 cases of the red blend, a few cases each of the Pinot and the Cab, and like getting this stuff on the shelf, and like, getting like a half pallet, or not, like, you know, 10, 15, 20 cases of wine in. That just like, you know, for us, like, you know, he gave us some good pricing that we could be aggressive with and do some promotional stuff. But I'm like, I mean, not to speak for him or them, you know, the business, but like, to be able to move like 10, 20 cases of wine like that because of a wine festival, like that's pretty cool. So like, that's just been like trying to take that feeling and like follow that, because it pays off. And like, if I'm trying to like seek out these standards and like meet these people, then like it helps to be able to sell the wine. Like, it's like, I would love to support people, support everybody really. Like there's so much wine that I want to buy and want to have on the shelf. But at the end of the day, like it's really cool to reorder wine. And like, it's easier said than done for sure. Cause there's a lot of stuff where it's like, okay, it's on the shelf. We got the order in the past is like, okay, that's it. that's the end of the story until like, all right, can you come and pour it and try to sell through some stuff? And then it's like, oh, do you want to reorder? I do, in my heart. Like, the company wouldn't want me to if I took the label away and the emotional attachment and ran movement for the year and logically applied. Like, no, probably shouldn't. But it's like better to like discover stuff that works and like just keep that momentum. And
I guess sometimes even if you connect with a wine, doesn't necessarily mean that the general public will kind of see it the same way that you did. Probably one of the tougher parts of the gig, I guess, like sort of knowing or hoping to know what people are going to respond to. And like you said, whether it's a label or the blend or the varietal, you know.
Tell you what, a good label always helps. Like any company that has spent time to like not just slap something that looks different on the label, if there's like a little bit of thought, like different is good most of the time, but like there's got to be like a certain like tact to it, where it's like it looks like a wine label, unless it's so good that it, you know, it doesn't look like anything else, then like okay, but like it looks like a wine label. Be creative, be adventurous, just like keep it classy enough, keep it like clean, you know, like don't get too stupid or like too over the top. Like labels are good, but I think one thing that I've found is like what I was saying earlier about like wine is like an emotional connection type of thing, whether it's the people that make it or the wine itself or the personal experience, all those factors. Like for me, that's how I look at wine. And like one thing that's really, really helped that I mentioned was like shelf talkers. And I'll give myself credit in that I'm a good writer when it comes, like I can use written word to my advantage to not just explain a wine, but just like talk about why I like it and tell that story. Cause like it is like, I am just like kind of giving my personal spiel on something most of the time, instead of just saying like, oh, notes of blackberries and cassis and whatever, you know, like I'll throw in notes and tasting stuff, but like usually my shelf talker is like 3 sentences.
Okay.
The first 2 maybe are like more just like giving credit to the producer or like making like a quick introduction of why they're super cool and like know their shit and like why you should just drink the wine. Like one of my assiduous Pinot Gris shelf talkers, like this, if you think you don't like Pinot Gris because of like those old like flabby gross things that you might think Pinot Gris are, like drink this, and if you do you like Pinot Gris? Then still drink this because you're going to like no matter what, you're going to like it. Like it has some texture. It's got some fruit. It's mineral. It's all the good shit. And it's like, it's a perfect middle ground. So just drink it. But like, yeah, trying to tell like, I don't know, for me, like basic tasting notes or just like scores, like looking at like Costco has like shelf talkers of their own. And they're like have like tasting notes that are perfectly acceptable, you know, sure, like they work for most people, but like they're like Kirkland Chianti, or like this is the case with many of their wines. It's like $17.99. Then the like list of like 4 tasting notes, and then 2 like lines that are 2021 vintage, no rating available. 2020 vintage, no rating available. And I'm like, you couldn't just leave that part off. Like, can we have a little bit of decorum here? Like, just because you have the ability to put a score on there doesn't mean you should. And then I'll double down and say, like, just because it has a score, like, who cares? You know, like, maybe just don't. Who cares? Yeah, who cares about scores? Like, I mean, some people actually do, but I've never ever bought into that. Excuse me, sorry. Yeah, I'll never mention a score. I'll never do any of that. But like, yeah, just like trying to connect with people, and like Kirkland, no score available. It's like, come on, guys. But yeah, to that point, people definitely think, yeah, tasting notes are fine, but people want the experience, you know, they want to know what it is. Like, so if you actually provide like some kind of personal anecdote or personal touch or experience about a wine, rather than just like tastes good, tastes like cab, you know, you'll like it type stuff, which that's sometimes my favorite thing is like if somebody's like holding a bottle of wine, especially like we sell a shit ton of like the Etz Gruner. That's just like an Austrian liter, nice clean label. We sell a shit ton of it and it's good. Like I would drink it, you know, people like come across it for the first time and they're looking at it and there's like not much to be gleaned other than like Gruner in a liter cold. Like, good. And they're like looking at it, thinking about it. I'll like notice it. I'll be like, it's good. And they're like, is it? And I'm like, yes. Like, that literally happened yesterday. But like sometimes people just need that little bit of affirmation. But when it comes to spending, you know, $20, $30, $40 on a bottle, the ability to just tell a story as opposed to trying to just be like, oh, here, you like Syrahs or you like red blends at generally this price point, like take a risk and put it on the shelf and hope they like it. Mm-hmm. That's definitely happens, you know, like you do have to like, I can't write a shelf talker for everything. Yeah. You know, so like aside from that, obviously personal interaction is the best, more or less. Like, it's, you know, depending on the person, really, like I said, like some people are like really don't want to talk to you. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But like some people really don't want to talk. But the people who do will generally like, who will hear me out. They're like, oh, cool. Like we can talk wine and like be casual about it. Like, again, like not trying to be a salesman. Like if you're looking at my wine, I want to be your friend. Like, even if you don't buy anything, like if you're looking at it, I appreciate that. So like, if you want me to tell you about it, I'm happy to. And like, that's it. You know, I'll tell you, like, again, it's not about like just selling and upselling and stuff. Like, yeah. But yeah, other than that, like putting stuff on the shelf is always just like a challenge or like a risk. I'm always like scared to buy new stuff or like take a risk. It's always a risk. And like, yeah, like I hope it sells, you know, or I hope I get the chance to sell it.
Well, it sounds like though you have enough customers that are maybe in there on a regular or semi-regular basis that you can kind of build some of that relationship with them, and they see you around and they buy that Pinot and like, oh, you know, I really like that. You know, what else you have that's similar to that, or you know, maybe it was a little too lean. Like, what do you have? You have something a little
I like
bigger.
People,
or, you know,
I love when people have feedback, because like it's like I didn't like it. Like, well, somebody bought a Syrah and said it was too fruity, and I'm like, is it though? That's like the most mineral one. But sure, try this Chenin Blanc. It's hella mineral. Like it's all like straight flint. And like I took that was a down sell, you know. I'm like, they bought a $30 bottle, I just sold them a $20 bottle. But I'm like, I care about your experience. You didn't like that one? Try this, you know. And it's great to have recurring customers and like building that relationship, because what we've seen, like part of the challenge and stuff, and like decrease in sales in the industry and stuff, like we've definitely seen like sales up and down, or you know, flat-ish, hard to improve year over year, but like less customers. And when I look at movement and stuff and trends. I'm like, I've told the owners this, is that like, yeah, we might not be, I wish we were selling a little bit more wine for sure. And like, let's keep trying to tap into that and attract new customers and all this stuff. But like the stuff that we're selling is really goddamn cool. Like we're selling a good amount of like really, for our standards, esoteric wine that people aren't buying anywhere else. Like people are taking these bottles home and they're taking them home again. And like, there's nowhere else in the general area that they could possibly get them. So like, that's like a huge boon to our business, is our stores. If like people are developing these like relationships with these wines that they care about, obviously, to come and buy and really enjoy, it's like they know it because of Piazza's, and we're providing that experience. And like, yeah, hopefully it does expand into like them telling their friends or them exploring more of the set and buying more and more wine for sure. But like, yeah, we're selling our everyday stuff. Like I look at my top movers, Rombauer, Chardonnay, 750 and 375 in the top 10 for sure. Like some cool import stuff that's like cheap and cheerful and just good, and like stuff that I would drink too. And then like, you know, side by side will be like catch and release Pinot, and then below that Duckhorn Sauvignon Blanc. And I'm like I'll take, you know, like it still pains me a little bit to sell as much La Marca as we do. Right. But like if I'm juxtaposing La Marca with some of these wines, like then what, you know, what that's super cool. Like that's part of that, like learning and being okay with like all sides of it, you know. Like I do have to play nice with the dark side to a certain extent, you know, to keep certain customers happy and keep like the lights on. Because like I said, some people will only ever buy La Marca, and even if I have a Prosecco that's way better at the same price, like they just don't want to hear it. It's like, that's fine. It needs to be okay. Like,
yeah, I think I kind of mentioned something like that when we were first texting, where that's one thing I kind of like about a store like that, or like I think I had said, you know, like Cordy Brothers, where there's like you can get Sutter Home White Zin. There's also like Sandlands, Perlagos, Harmeyer, Ridge, Coruscant, like on the shelf.
Yeah.
It's a cool experience to be in a place like that. And you can also get some bread and cheese and everything else. But
yeah, yeah. I mean, we have Sutter Home 4-pack, the mini 4-packs on the bottom shelf. And like, there still is some Behringer White Zin at the Palo Alto store that, unfortunately, there was one lady who was buying it somewhat frequently, but she might not be around anymore. Oh, okay. So there's been like 5 bottles that haven't been reordered in a long time. But I remember my dude down there, he's like, do you want to get rid of this? And I'm like, yeah, I definitely want to get rid of that. And he's like, okay, but 2 bottles were gone. And this is like when I first started. He's like, okay, but I just faced it the other day and now 2 more bottles are gone. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck it, dude. Reorder it. Just reorder it. And like, we sold a little bit of it. And I'm like, you know what? This is fine. I remember my grandmother drinking this shit in like 1997 when I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
That's fine, you know. Yeah. But like, yeah, just like being universal enough and being like, I said it before, but like just being approachable in like your presentation and your attitude as like a store, like from a presentation standpoint of like, yeah, like I don't want to exclude anybody, you know, customer wise, at least. Right. There's plenty I want to exclude on the wine and product side of things, but like I don't want anybody to feel excluded or like that, like this is good wine. You don't know what good wine is if you're doing, you know, it's like, what's the point? You know, some people just want to drink the wine that they want to drink or do what they want to do, and that's fine. But if they're in the store, then that's good. And if we get more people in the store, then that's better. And some of that requires like, yeah, like you gotta have, I sell that side, buy Sutter Home 4-packs, 10 cases at a time. Yeah. Does it feel good to give my Southern rep that order? No. Like, does it feel fine to just like keep the bottom line moving and just like, I don't have to do anything to sell that wine? It's pretty easy to just throw on the shelf. They're plastic, so I can throw it, I can drop it, I can do anything. So it's fine, you know, but like, yeah. And then like, it's cool to kind of like draw that parallel with like, I nerd out on like merchandising and like designing my shelves or like placement and all that stuff. And like to have Ridge next to like having like the Ridge Petite Syrah and then like the Samuel Lewis Smith 00 Syrah next to it, and then the Catch and Release North Coast Syrah next to it. It's like, again, just like subliminally in some way, like, you know, leading people into like this experience that we're giving, and like without overtly stating like, it's cool if you buy the Ridge. It's cool if you look at the stuff next to it. It's cool if you buy both of them, you know, like, and then like having like Bogle cab next to Viano cab on the shelf. And like,
Yeah.
I've made that conversion multiple times, and like, dude, like that's life-changing for that person, because now they're drinking real wine that isn't, you know, poisonous. So like they get to support the Viano family, which is awesome. But then like you get to drink like wine now. Like, so good for you.
Yeah. Something's good, like honestly made. And you probably have a kind of unique perspective on it because you are selling some of those like the larger production wines right next to the smaller independent, you know, producers, natural or otherwise. But in general, I guess, like, what do you feel like small producers are doing well to sell their wines in a situation like yours, or what could they do better? Like, what's the room for improvement?
Yeah. Well, I think for the first part of the question, the best advantage and the thing that like stands out the most to me and from my perspective, in my experience, what people resonate with the most from customers resonate with the most is just like the detail and the attention and the emphasis on like farming and sourcing and quality fruit. And obviously the word organic helps. But also like, I'm glad that like there isn't much demand for like CCOF, and like, not that those aren't good things, but just like the financial perspective
Right.
of like,
More like practicing organic,
certified organic
certified.
versus generally like taking your word for it is enough, or like having organic sourced from organic grapes, or like the shelf talkers that I make. I have like a little section of like organic, minimal sulfur, unfiltered, like little, you know, modifiers that are helpful. But like, no, I think that, I mean, a lot of these producers do like on the labels in some way acknowledge the sourcing or the farming or, you know, all that quality, and like the attention to detail is like a huge aspect of it to me. Like, I think that that's like the most universal side of it, that these people are like really caring and like putting that like handmade precision and just like thought into like, we want to use good grapes and here's the site. And like I think Ryan Sturm does like an excellent job of like talking about terroir and like, you know, giving that educational perspective. But just the wines themselves, like on the label says the vineyard, and then like if you look more into it, like you can get a lot of very valuable, interesting information from that type of thing. And like a lot of producers are doing that same thing too. And then aside from that, like what can be done better? I mentioned labels. A lot of these producers have good labels. So like, luckily this generation mostly gets that. There's some that like definitely need help. Not to name names, but the investment in a good label without overthinking it is good. Like that's very advantageous. Like I can't tell you enough times where I've either sold a wine and somebody would be like, you know, where it's like, I would have never bought this if you didn't tell me about it or show it to me. Because like they're like, this label, like I just won't do it. And other times where like people have even told me like, I got to try this wine, it was really good, I'm not going to buy it though, I just can't do the label. Like straight up, like multiple times that's happened. Like, which is an extreme use case. Like that's not a realistic, you know, everyday scenario. But like people, that just shows you some people really do care that much.
Yeah.
So there is like a middle ground of like interesting but safe labels. Invest in your labels, whatever that is. But aside from that, like, yeah, tapping into approachability, like I'm all for like people nerding out and like making the wine that they want to make in the style that they want to make it, like whatever they're passionate about, that's awesome. But if you do care about like contributing to the industry from a, like, I hate to say it, from a financial successful perspective, from like the ecosystem of grower, producer, retailer, and distributor in the middleman situation too. But like, if you want this to be like a universally beneficial situation, like you have to at least make some wine that's approachable and like stable and clean. Like I think that maybe some producers, like I think Mariona's a good example where he makes some pretty like wild stuff and does like cider co-ferments and like
Yeah.
some stuff that's like funky and weird and like I said, I wouldn't put up on my shelf at Piazza's, but there's definitely like those wines connect more with like your cool wine bar crowd and like that sort of thing, but then also makes like these super stable, strong, sturdy, robust California reds that pay homage to like a style that many wine drinkers will want to drink and recognize and respect.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, maybe like some producers who only make like pretty 0-0 funky, crazy stuff. Like if they do want, if they care about, you know, being part of the landscape of like kind of growing the brand or the future of wine, really, I mean, like that's what it comes down to me. Like I could get super deep on it, but like the future of wine, the future of retail, like I have a soft spot for grocery stores because I'm a grocery boy through and through. You know, like I've worked at grocery stores for beyond the wine world. So like that's 10 plus years of my life I've been in grocery stores. So like retail, everyday retail as we know it, wine as we know it, like if this is going to take the next step into the next level and or into the future, like we need people kind of all on the same page, doing their own thing respectfully, but just like kind of fighting towards a common goal. And part of that is like contributing wine that like can fit on a Piazza's shelf. And like, it doesn't mean it has to be boring. It doesn't mean it's like, can't be experimental. I just mean like, I need more Sauvignon Blancs from like some of these cool producers, you know, like, and like part of it is again, like the financial thing, like why don't all these people make Cabernet? Like, because it costs a fuck ton to not just buy it, but to produce it, it's a pain in the ass. Like even Pinot, like Pinot's another one where it's just like, it's just fucking expensive and it's finicky and people get fucking pissed off by it. So like understandable. I get it. Like I'm not here complaining, but like, yeah, if you make crazy 0-0 wine and you want to like be a steward to California wine or a steward or like a ambassador to what we are as our identity is, then like, yeah, make your crazy experimental stuff and super natty, but then like add some sulfur to some of your wines, like make a white field blend and just add some sulfur to it and sell it as good white wine and hopefully be able to like achieve some price point differentiation to where like some of your wines can fit on the shelf under $21.99 or under. And you know, like I've said this before, but like I'm sorry, like we all love a chillable red, but nobody like, no, I can't sell your $39.99 chillable red blend, like, or your red white co-ferment. And in many cases that has like too much VA if it isn't ice cold, you know, it's like $40 for an unserious wine that's fun. Like, okay, it's fun, but like, dude, like this is most people who aren't like at a cool wine bar or like with their homies, like who are just like supporting it because it's a cool vibe. And that's important too. But like anybody else who's bought a $40 bottle, like would not take it seriously, you know, and that's fair. Like that's another thing that I'm like coming around to is like not just being bitter that some people don't like or have bad opinions of like this community or like this section of the wine world because like they've been burned by it, you know, like it's okay to like be upset that a wine doesn't meet their standards. And like, yeah, maybe some cases standards are off or you can be critical of that, but like sometimes it's not, you know, there is something to be learned from like tradition. And there's a reason why like your Kendall Jacksons and your Robert Mondavis have risen to the point that they are. They've lost their identity now, but like what got them there, you know, plenty of to criticize along the way, but like was making red wine, like good wine for the table that people drank every day or every, you know, event, whatever their relationship to it was like defining what California wine was. So like now they're, you know, something entirely different, but like some of the people who have better intentions than that, consumers, respect those things because of what they were or what they think of them as now. So like meet them halfway or like lean into like take a note from that and like lean into it because there's the future of California wine depends on like the new generation too. And I don't think that the new generation too, like of people who are non-wine drinkers or even just like, I meet a lot of people who are just like really casual, who just like wine, you know, like they won't necessarily care as much about like a certain quality, but like, you know, maybe they'll appreciate the fact that it's organic, but like maybe they just don't have the capacity or the care to like put the effort in to learn like, oh, this vineyard and this and that. It's like, yeah, it's super cool. I love nerding out on that stuff and I love learning that stuff. But like some people just like, oh, this is good wine. Oh, and it's organic. Great. Awesome.
That's enough for them.
That's all I need, you know? And like, I'm doing a little bit of, I consulted for a wine bar in Redwood City in like the Menlo Atherton area. And now I'm actually like bartending there a little bit on Saturday nights, which was not my intention at all. But I helped them build their wine list with the same kind of principles I'm using at Piazza's, because like it's Menlo Atherton area, which is another like micro climate of demographic and interest, and like obviously there's money there and tech and like biotech, like I don't know, but it's super interesting. But also some of the same stuff I've been talking about, like long-standing residential like families and whatnot. So like same approach. I'm like, let's just throw this kind of like approachable but interesting, compelling wines, local especially wines at people, and see what happens. And like, yeah, like nobody's batting an eye. Like maybe to no fault or no credit. Like really, it's like we kind of like joked around that like we could have poured like kind of anything as long as it fit like a certain level of, you know, like any Sauvignon Blanc would do, or and as long as the Chardonnay has oak, like any amount of oak is fine. You know, like a lot of these people who even like are willing to spend whatever amount of money, like they're just like enjoying their company, their wine, the food, like, and not overthinking any of it. So like that's part of it too. We're just like everyday approachable stuff goes so far. And then like the world of expanding upon that is great. Like, again, like we need that to be like, you know, to have global universal appeal, like, like stuff that nobody else is doing. Like we're just, you know, pushing boundaries and all that stuff is great. And like an important section of the industry, but what's going to pay the bills and what's going to like keep sustaining this to exist, you know, like, like I have a couple things like people who are willing to spend money on Sancerre. Like, I don't think that clientele's ever going to go away, you know, like it is a little bit like old money type vibe, but that still like leaks down all the way into younger generations and beyond. So like selling Sancerre drinkers, Arnott Roberts Ascona Vineyard Sauvignon Blanc, like that's been like my little secret success story of the last like the last 2 months. I've met like 3 or 4 people I sold that to, and they're like, holy fucking shit. And I'm like, I know, dude, that is like, it's like a fruit bomb up front and then like licking a granite slab. It's awesome. And they're like, dude, this is crazy. I'm like, I know. And I don't even have a $50 Sancerre on the shelf, but I'm selling them $50 Sauvignon Blanc, California Sauvignon Blanc. So I'm like,
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That's a good success story. That's really cool in general, just kind of like shifting people's perspective on some of the wines maybe, or like, hey, if you like this, you know, give this a try one time, see what you think, and let me know. Like
Sancerre is a good example of like something that like people latch onto, and like I'm sure they like Sancerre, I'm sure they like mineral driven Sauvignon Blanc, like for sure, like they know what they like. But like Sancerre can also be like very generic and like it can mean a lot of things to different people, but like it means something. So then like that example would be like an opportunity to be like potentially take somebody's perspective and shift it into that slightly more educational perspective of, well, this wine's from the Santa Cruz Mountains. Yeah. It's from the, you know, levels to it. It's from this vineyard, this whatever. But like even just being like, wait, the California wine, let alone Santa Cruz Mountains wine, that's like, you know, less than an hour drive from where they're standing. Like this wine came and was made right in this area, whatever. Just saying like the Sancerres that you've been buying for the last 10 years and know that you love, like to have that like light go off and be like, California wine can be this too. Like, and then that, depending on the person, you know, it can open a lot of different doors to where like next thing you know, maybe they're searching out more California Sauvignon Blancs, and maybe that leads them down a path of like a bunch of shitty producers that I wouldn't recommend that are just overpriced basic Sauvignon Blancs, but like maybe it doesn't, maybe it opens their eyes to other white wine. Like that's another interesting little subset of like challenges in a grocery store is like, I keep having to foolishly shrink my Sauvignon Blanc set because I want to fit in other white wine and like not very rarely, but like, does it make logical sense or do I like, I have both Sturm Rieslings. It's like to keep like squeezing stuff in, single facing, like, or like, oh, I need more. I definitely need the Arnott Roberts Fallen Gina and the Ribolla Gialla on the shelf for $50. Like, luckily it's only a 6-pack, so it all fits on the shelf and it's not going bad anytime soon. So like, like that's another thing. You find the right customer though, and it's like, this isn't going to sell itself, but when somebody buys this, they're going to be stoked. Mm-hmm. So that's like another thing of just having things like that are just like there, ready to like blow somebody's mind if and when the time comes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you get people stopping in for more special occasion bottles or on their way to a dinner party.
Yeah, the holidays.
Like
the holidays hit at Piazza's old school grocery vibes, like just packed. People like. I love that subliminal like. The idea that like the holidays automatically means drinking, like at Piazza's, it mean like people take it so literally. Like people who I never see, who shop the store every day, who I never see in the department or every week, like are like come November 16th, like all of a sudden two Baileys, to like vodka for grandma, like everybody's drinking. Like it's great. Like not to encourage too much alcohol consumption, but like it's nice when people like come around to like, this is okay. I'm like, yeah, it's cool to drink wine, like it's cool. It is nice. But yeah, like the grocery world is fascinating. And yeah, I do wish that like that vibe would come back a little bit more, like not quite on that COVID level of just like frantic, furious, like, I'm not going anywhere this week. I'm stocking up, like maybe like less depressive vibes, but just more like I'm down to bring home some bottles today for good use in the near future. Like that's the best.
You have anything else planned in the near future for Piazzas? Like anything you feel like you could do better there or like kind of putting into practice or that's.
Yeah. Well, I put some Harmeyer on an end cap. Some Harmeyer Shannon. That's
there you go. Okay.
That's a fun one. But I think I'm on the brink of doing round 2 on the local wine fair. Maybe I haven't sent any official emails, but I'm thinking maybe June. And this time trying to make it like exactly what I wanted it to be the first time, with like ample promotion, cross promotion, a flyer. Ideally a t-shirt. Branded swag and stuff. But yeah, like another version of the local wine fair, maybe at both locations, or doing different little groups of producers at different at each location. Okay. Like in the same month or something like that. Just trying to keep fighting the good fight, because I don't know, being in the grocery world, I'm always exposed to a lot of just the jargon and like the monotony of what these bigger companies are doing, like your RNDCs and your Southerns, and now Golden Brands is the one on the scene that, like, I don't know how much knowledge you have like of distributors and stuff, but like Golden Brands is like the new beer distributor originally, who took over like all your corporate like Modelo's and all that stuff. Okay. But it's owned by Coke, which is a bigger company called Reyes, which is like a multinational holding company that's affiliated with like arms production and like microchips and like, but they took over that. And like ever since then, it's been like a year plus, and like slowly but surely they're like eating up even like RNDC and Southern stuff. And like even RNDC and Southern, who are like the normal kind of everyday evil empire, they're like, who are these guys? And they're like shaking in their boots, and they're just like, Golden Brand's like the worst company ever. Just like no customer service, like everything's run through algorithms, and like just really like miserable, soulless, vapid. Like the reps are like automatons who just like say like here's the sales pitch. I said no before you even started it, but I like the phone's like listening to them and they have to say it. And their boss is like, finish the pitch. Like, it's like, I don't know what it is. It's crazy. But like, no, just like a little bit of the grocery world can be a little bit like trying in that way. So trying to like keep up the spirit and like keep meeting people and keep inviting people into the store, like producers and stuff, to like lift that weight and just like show customers the light and just like keep doing something that, like I've said it, like keep doing what nobody else in the peninsula is doing.
Yeah.
In a grocery store. Like there's cool wine shops, there's wine bars doing cool stuff, restaurants with cool lists and stuff, like not taking all the credit at all. Just like, but like in a grocery environment, exposing people to that. And the Wine Fest, trying to take it on again would be super cool. And yeah, that's the vibe. And maybe like, again, pushing the boundaries of the grocery thing. Like this time, maybe try to get lo-fi oyster in and like have people shucking oysters in a grocery store, drinking wine and stuff. So, yeah.
Is there anything we kind of missed or glanced over that you'd like to discuss?
I feel like I ramble, but other than that, I got my Golden Brands, my Golden Brand spiel out too. It's weird. I never thought I'd be like, wine wasn't my first thought. Like I was really into beer and I thought that was it. And then I was like, wait, wine's cooler, but not really. Like, I don't know. Like, it's more complex, which I guess is why I've like dug into it deeper and like cared about it more in a way. 'Cause it's like beer is more like everyday and fun, and more people are like I said, like I sell more like cool 4-packs and more like cool breweries, like easier every day without too much effort other than just like putting it there and like maybe a little bit of effort, but like I don't know. But wine has just been like, now I find myself like just caring. Like I just care so much about like California wine now, and it's like it's a vibe. Like I've gone through a different, like every year, every few months, like a different iteration of like what I'm super into in wine. And but the past year, like I've just been like, no, California wine's it. Like this is the thing. Not that I'm like against or not embracing other things, still trying to do more with a lot of other things. Like Piazza's has a pretty sick Eastern European wine set that like, again, no other grocery store has, but I don't know. I just see like the benefit of like trying to like grow my career and like my future, whether it, with Piazza's ideally great, but like just on a bigger picture is like, I need a lot of this shit to work. Like with all like these producers and like this generation and like this thing needs to like keep growing and keep reaching a broader audience. If like what I'm caring about and like putting a lot of like what my career trajectory is, I need people to care about it. And I need like people who pay salaries and like make their own sets of money to care about it, to like continue growing this for myself and for like these producers and like, make a statement big enough to like, like we have an opportunity to make a bigger statement, as like you hear that like Southern and all these people are saying like, oh, like wine's going to go unsold or grapes are going to go unbought and all this stuff. And I'm like, I know some people who are going to be down to buy some cheap grapes and make some wine out of it, like for sure. So like the struggle is real for sure. But like if the pieces need to get picked up, like I know that this side of the industry will be down to do it and do the dirty work. So like we have an opportunity to like position this as like, this is the future, like reaching more people. Only so much wine can be made by a lot of these people, but like keep spreading it out and keep getting it in people's hands. That's it, man. I'm just like, I want to keep doing this.
Thanks for listening today. I really enjoyed speaking with Shane and hearing about selling these small production wines in a more casual, grocery-focused environment. Many of the producers he discussed have had episodes on this podcast, and hopefully some of the others will soon. You can tell he really feels great about introducing people to small, independent producers and getting those wines into the hands of folks that wouldn't normally go into a wine shop. It's just another way to reach consumers. You can follow Piazza's on Instagram at Piazza's Fine Food or their website, piazzaslovesfood.com. You can follow the podcast on wherever you're listening and the Instagram at Indie Wine Podcast. And feel free to email indiewinepodcast@gmail.com with comments, questions, or feedback. If you're enjoying the podcast, I'd love if you told a friend or wine lover about it and help spread the word. Rating, reviewing, or donating at patreon.com/indiewinepodcast helps too. It all goes to offsetting podcast expenses and allows for more episodes. We'll be back soon with another episode. Have a good one.